So, Colin, right? Yep.
I'm gonna sit down for this one. So I'm basically gonna. I wrote that. So I'm gonna share sort of my testimony, but I don't know. I think for me, like my testimony has always been something that I've kind of been struggling with, and I think for me it's because I did have such just a tough time when I was growing up, and a lot of me wanted to sort of like hide it. A lot of me just didn't really want to say this, and so this is actually something recently that like sort of I've been going through, and so yeah, if I start crying, bear with me. And I have to read it too. Usually I'm pretty good at talking, but I'm going to have to read this one. And so, yeah, my story starts with hardship and loneliness. I never had any family deaths or had to struggle financially, but I've always been pretty much under attack when I was growing up. I had an older brother, and he got involved with sort of a bad group of friends, and they were always disrespectful, and they're pretty much doing a lot of wrong things. And like I was the younger brother, and I was always stuck with my brother because it's kind of like the older brother, younger brother kind of thing. And I didn't have too many friends growing up, so a lot of times my parents just like stuck me with my older brother. And so yeah, I was pretty much in that group. I was pretty much like the whipping boy. I was pretty much I was always like made fun of. I was always the one under attack in that group, and pretty much every time I was with that group, I was always afraid of being abused in that group. And so, and also at that time, I wasn't good at communicating. I didn't really know how to talk to my parents. I didn't really have sort of anyone to talk to or anyone to tell through, like, just within general with my parents. I felt like I wasn't able to trust them. I wasn't able to let them in on my personal life and sort of the things I've been going through. And also in second grade, I also had to repeat it, or actually failed second grade. And so I had to take it over again. And that was a big hurt on me. And it was kind of like a self-esteem kind of breaker. It's like you're with all your friends that you grew up from preschool, and all of a sudden like it just drops. And then the school is pretty small, so like you see each other as you go through the grades. And I just remember like walking down the hall and just seeing them walk down the hall. I just felt a lot of shame because like they were once my classmates, and now like I guess I wasn't smart enough to keep up with them. I wasn't like good enough to be with them, and so that was also pretty hard on me. And so and I think the hardest part of this was that this all kind of happened before like I was 8 years old, and so just the fact that like I was so young and I had no idea what to deal with all these issues, and I didn't really have the support, and I didn't really know how to find support because I was so young. It just made me really question like why would God ever put me through this? Why would God put me in a situation where I was so helpless, where I was so sort of powerless, and also kind of abandoned, where like no one was there to help me, and I had to like pretty much spend time in my room by myself, like be able to deal with it myself. And I think since when I was 8 till like the next about 7 years, I sort of just lived that way, and I was pretty closed off. I think when I was always growing up in high school, I mean middle school, and the rest of grade school, it was me just pushing people away. It's me not letting people know me or understand me because I just didn't want them to hurt me, or I didn't want them to know where I'm vulnerable or know what hurts me. And so and that's pretty much up until high school, but then in middle school I started playing basketball. And when we entered into high school, a lot of my middle school team, I still wanted to play with them. And so for us to play together, we had to join like this church team because it's only a team that would like let us play together under like an organization. And so, yeah, in high school I started playing for the church team. But then one of the requirements was on Saturday you have to go to their fellowship. And for me it was like, it was like a trap. It was like, what the heck? So yeah, I remember the first day, like I was going to this thing called the fellowship for the church. And I just walked in and it was like it was like 10 of us, like high school, like basketball guys just walking in, like a church fellowship. And we just sat in the back and like just leaned in the back and they're having like the most inspiration going on. And I thought I was like, this is like the weirdest thing ever. This like, and every time someone shared, everyone was like clapping and it was so encouraging. I'm like, this is too much for me. This is too much positive encouragement going on in this room. I couldn't handle it. And like naturally, after like a couple months, a lot of my basketball friends, they kind of just dropped out. They're like, yeah, we can't handle this anymore. But then for me, I decided to stay in it because I guess being in that environment, it was one of the few places where I felt like I was able to be myself. And it was one of the few environments that people actually like, they accepted me for who I was. And that sort of just made me want to say that I didn't want to leave that group. And so when all the basketball people left, they kind of just, I was like, all right, I'm going to hang out over here. And I kind of stayed with it. And so, and by my sophomore year in high school, we had a camp just for the high school students. We had a camp, kind of a retreat thing. And it was that night, I remember the speaker, and he was talking about, he was talking about sort of God being with us through all aspects of our lives. And for me, I sort of thought of God like, okay, he's with me in church and like the pastor talks about him, or he's with me when I'm at fellowship and we're like doing Bible studies. But I really see that he was there, like he was there through even when I was a child, but he was there when I was he was there when I repeated second grade and I saw like my friends like in different classes, and just that shame I felt, like he was there beside me through those times. And that night I just remember just feeling the comfort, just feeling like I wasn't alone, I wasn't abandoned, that God was there with me through those times. And yeah, I just cried that night. I was just like, I just saw how faithful he was. Even though like I felt like I was alone, even though I felt like, man, this is the worst. Like why would you put a kid through this? But that he grew me through that, and yet he was there, and I wasn't alone. And so that was my sophomore year of high school, and so 6 years from now, or 6 years from that point, I was just, I'm just, as a Christian, I realized, life didn't get easier, and there's still times where I'm depressed, and there's still times where I feel lonely. But then I think the difference is that with Jesus, I have someone there to comfort me. I have someone there who knows me inside and out. And I have someone who has an unconditional love for me. And that just makes things so much better. That makes just times where you're alone, times where you're just struggling to just deal with, I don't know, a purpose in life. Just to know that there is a God out there who loves you unconditionally. And that's just a difference maker, and that's just something that I prize and something that I treasure since I've accepted Christ. And so, that's my story.
Thank you, Colin. And